Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Caroline, what's going on today? How are you?
I'm doing well, Bryce. I think we're both really excited today. I'm feeling that energy, and I think I know why. When this episode airs, we are 1 week away from the Grand Prix of figure skating final. That's why you're so jazzed, right?
I am, yes. I know obviously podcasts are not a visual medium per se, but if everybody could see my sequined top that I'm wearing today, they would be quite impressed because I am so excited about what was it? The figure skating World Cup or something?
The Grand Prix, it's the arguably the fourth most prestigious figure skating championship of an Olympic season. You know, we're all just looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting to see some Olympic favorites head to head for the first time. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I hope we can just keep that excitement together for this next week.
I think we can. So I have to ask though, because listeners will be shocked to hear that I don't follow figure skating that much, but who, like from Canada, like if you're tuning in, casual viewer, who should you be rooting for?
Canadian ice dance team, Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier. They train in Ontario. They have a great rhythm dance this year set to the music of Elton John.
Yeah, like we are clearly due for a figure skating episode. I think maybe once we roll into the Olympics, maybe that's our time to finally do that.
It could be. We have a lot of big plans for 2022.
We
So,
do. Yeah, so
so
keep
we'll have to see.
keep listening. Today though, to kind of segue from figure skating to Lord of the Rings. I can't.
There was no segue. That was my favorite part of your
there was
segue.
no segue. Yeah, absolutely. Today though, it's funny because kind of when we set up our episodes, we kind of sometimes we take a look at, hey, what are some big like pop culture anniversaries coming up that kind of give us a chance to go back and look at some really popular titles. And us being a library podcast, it just made sense that we take a look back at the 20th anniversary of the first Lord of the Rings movie. The Fellowship of the Ring, of course, came out in winter 2001. It just makes sense that we're finally covering Lord of the Rings. We joked on the last episode that we covered ABBA before we did Lord of the Rings, which is kind of odd for a library podcast, don't you think?
I think yes, but knowing us, it also made sense. But we knew that whenever we did cover Lord of the Rings, we would have the perfect guest for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome back to the show. I can't believe it's been this long, actually. Our crack research team here at Overdue Finds let me know that this is actually her first podcast visit in 2001. Last time she was on the show.
2021.
2000.
Right.
Sorry, did I say 2000?
It hasn't been 20 years. It's been a long time, but not 20 years.
So her first visit since 2021. She's last on our interactive storytelling episode with writer Davis GC. Please welcome back official best friend of Overdue Finds, Kate Gibson. Kate, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. It has been a long while.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. We were always excited to finally have you back on the show. And it's funny because, when we started the podcast and there's lots of ideas coming in from staff on like episode ideas. And I remember one of the ones, like, because we work on quite a few projects together, you were like, when you do a Lord of the Rings episode, and you will, like, telling me this is gonna happen, you better have me on. Like, I almost scared for my life that God forbid what would happen if we did a Lord of the Rings episode and we didn't include you. So
thank you for having me. I'm very excited. I was saying to Caroline earlier today, I was researching last night by rewatching Fellowship of the Rings for probably the 100th time. I don't even know. So yay, I'm so excited.
Nice. It's funny because earlier this year during our March Madness, we had, I think we only ended up having one character from Lord of the Rings in the tournament. And it's funny, we had Samwise, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But originally, I think I had Gollum in there.
Yes.
And because I was like, oh, he's like the most memorable character. And then I was like, you know what? And some people were telling me, no, you got to go Samwise. I'm like, I'm going to EPL's Lord of the Ring expert, Kate Gibson, and you set me straight and you informed me why Samwise was kind of, if we only have one character, he was the way to go.
Has to be Sam, yeah.
And we have to mention, too, before we get going today, that we mentioned this on the last episode, that EPL, we've actually got like a second podcast now. So we're almost going to be forming a EPL podcast network. And Kate, you, of course, you're on and you produce Capital City Press Anthology, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. Can you let listeners know a little bit more about it?
For sure. So the Capital City Press Anthology is kind of a short-run series. It's going to be 10 episodes in total, and it's all of the stories and poems that we've collected in our Volume 1 online magazine, basically, of Capital City Press Anthology. So each episode, I introduce 3 or 4 of the pieces from the anthology, and it's read by staff from EPL. So across the system, you get to hear voices from librarians to, we have one of the Mel Clarks reading, library assistants, children's staff from the children's library. So it's a real range of people, and you might recognize some of the voices coming to you. It's very exciting.
Nice. Yeah, I listened to first couple of episodes, and yeah, it's really, I mean, we've mentioned this on the show before, but we've got some really talented staff at EPL, and I know when you did the call out for staff to come on and read stories, like there was so many people, and like you said, like just from a wide range of backgrounds signing up to help bring some local writers' stories to life.
Yeah, it was a great response. I didn't know what to expect. I thought people might be a bit wary about putting their voice out there on the airwaves for everyone to hear, but I was overwhelmed by the response. I was so happy, and the quality was really great. If you listen to it, you'll also notice that I am trying to up my quality a bit more too, and how I present it. I was like testing out different radio voices to try and see what was the best one. So hopefully it works.
And I just want to say, congratulations on Capital City Press Anthology.
Thank you.
Just existing in the world. I know that was a dream and a goal for yours and the Capital City Press team. And to have that out there is just so exciting and fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, it was something we'd wanted to do for a long time. It took a long time to get off the ground. A lot of it because of COVID. It kind of changed our timeline so much, but we worked through it, and I'm really, really pleased with it. And the quality of writing that came out of it and came out of the people of Edmonton was, I mean, I'm not surprised because I've been working with the writers for years now, but yeah, it's just amazing. So I hope everyone goes to check it out. Really easy to find online, capitalcitypress.ca. So.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it is available on all major podcast platforms, wherever you get this show. Capital City Press Anthology is there, and the best part is it comes out every other week, like our show, on opposite weeks. So next Friday, watch for the new episode of Capital City Press Anthology. All right, let's get into our recent Overdue Finds picks. Kate, what have you been enjoying lately?
I had a hard time choosing. That's not a surprise. I always have a hard time choosing because I've been watching so many TV shows and all this kind of stuff. But what I decided to go with, actually, is a book I just finished reading a little while ago, but not that long ago, because it's actually the second book by an author I talked about once years ago on the podcast. I'm going to show it to you guys because you can see, but it's Pastoral Song by James Rebanks. I don't know if you remember me talking about this. He's a shepherd from Northern England.
Yeah.
And he wrote, his first book was about sort of it was called Shepherd's Life. And it was about sort of the seasonal job and what it's like. And it's beautiful and really well written. So he's come out with this second book. It's called English Pastoral. If you get it from England, here in North America, they've changed the title to Pastoral Song. And it's talking about his experience as a farmer from learning from his grandfather, who farms very much in sort of an old traditional style way, where he was physically on the ground and tilling and, looking at the worms and the birds and all the different things that made his land healthy, through the 80s and 90s, when big agriculture kind of came in, and all the farmers were having to buy into that in order to just survive. But then the problems that caused to the land, and now he's trying to rewild his land and kind of bring it back so that it's healthy and sustainable, and his journey that way, because that's not been easy. It's not the like cheapest way to go, let's say, but he talks about why it's so important and the damage we're seeing because of the choices we made over the past few decades, which is funny. I finished reading this, and now when we're recording this, it's like 2 days out from right near my hometown in Abbotsford. The prairies there, all the farmlands, just got massively flooded because of crazy rains, and just thinking about how we've treated this land and what that might mean in the next couple of decades. So, really beautiful book. I was crying through most of it, actually, and I would recommend to anyone to read it. I think it's a super important one.
Yeah, it's been hard to watch on the news the last week or so here with everything that's going on in BC. So yeah, definitely our thoughts are going out to everybody there. And but yeah, I do remember you mentioning that was probably within our first 15 episodes, I think.
Probably. We were at Enterprise Square. I remember that. So.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember being like, "Whoa, there's still shepherds out there," and yes, there is.
Yeah.
Caroline, what have you been enjoying lately?
My pick today is Check Please, Volume 2, Sticks and Scones by Ngozi Ukazu. And this is Volume 2 of everyone's favorite webcomic turned graphic novel about a diverse group of college hockey players. And following the members of the team. I talked about the first book a couple years ago. I think it was my pick for my favorite book one year. And this is a continuation. The comics have been collected. There's 4 years of them, 4 kind of seasons of them that follow Eric Biddle's life at Samwell University, this fictional East Coast college where he has joined the hockey team. This one captures his years 3 and 4. I'm not going to get, the first one ends on a bit of a romantic cliffhanger. So I'm not going to give too much away, but in this one, Eric, or Biddy rather, is now the first queer captain of an NCAA hockey team. Jack Zimmerman is playing in the NHL. Biddy is still baking pies and making videos, and Jack's ex is kind of floating around in the periphery. New people come on the team and they figure out how to work together. And some of the themes overall for both of the books, but book 2 in particular, leadership, connection, long distance relationships, sexuality and sexual identity, being comfortable with yourself, and what you do after college. So it's a great series. I love the characters. I love the art style. It's a very fun, playful style that Ngozi Ukazu has. And yeah, just really recommend this graphic novel series to anyone who likes either hockey or queer characters or art, I would say. So Bryce, what's your overdue find pick?
Yeah, so I watched this documentary probably about a month and a half ago now, and yeah, we have it in our collection on both DVD and Blu-ray, and it's called The Last Blockbuster. Have either of you seen it yet?
I have not. It is definitely on my list.
No, I haven't seen it either, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, this is a really fun documentary. I kind of feel like me and kind of miss those days of going to Blockbuster on a Friday or Saturday night and looking through the different aisles at the covers and grabbing a pizza afterwards. Like, this one's for you. The documentary takes a look at the fall of course, the video rental chain Blockbuster, and how there's one Blockbuster store left in North America, and it's located in the small town of Bend, Oregon. It's run by a lady by the name of Sandy Harding, and she's got members of her family working there. And basically, the documentary kind of covers how like she's able to keep this store running without really kind of like a Blockbuster head office anymore. And like she goes to Walmart to buy their movies and everything. It's like, yeah, it's like a really charming documentary, I thought. And kind of, you know, you have these people who are really passionate about not only movies, but just like connecting with other people that's really missing from, you know, just going to Netflix or, you know, turning on your computer and watching something on there. It obviously reminded me a lot about the library in a way. And I know there's a lot of places, we're very fortunate here to have lots of EPL locations, but I also know in the US, there's lots of places that, you know, really struggle just to keep libraries open. So they talk to some regulars who go to this Blockbuster store, and they appreciate having staff there and to get their recommended picks, just like kind of what we would do with our patrons coming into EPL, for obviously Caroline and Kate, what you do, and, you know, making recommendations and pointing people out and in the right direction to grab books and other titles that they're looking for. The one thing I did find really fun about this documentary, though, is that I actually used to work at a Blockbuster, and it's funny to see, like, you see shots of them using like the same old operating system that was used in like the 90s and everything. Yeah, so that was really fun. It's kind of cool too, because there's also a lot of celebrity cameos as well, talking about kind of the heyday of video stores really in the 80s. And then how, Caroline, we've talked about this before, how, you know, when you were growing up, you would go to the local convenience store and they would have their
convenience store.
Yeah, exactly. Like you know, if you grew up during a certain period, you 100% rented videos from a couple of convenience stores. So that was just the norm then. So yeah, we've got cameos from Kevin Smith, comedian Doug Benson, who's actually he's in Bend for a show, and he stops by to rent one of his movies, which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, so if you have fond memories of video store rentals, and even if you weren't a big Blockbuster fan but just kind of miss going into having that video store experience, I think you'll really enjoy the last Blockbuster.
That sounds awesome. I definitely remember we would go every Friday down to the video store and rent, and then get some treats. It was our special, like, you know, from the time I was a child, we would go every Friday. Yeah,
I've seen like a few people on Twitter maybe kind of explaining like almost what the video store experience was like to like their kids. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? Like, you pick up your movie, like you have to return it? Like, this just seems like so much work and everything.
There was a time when we had VHS and you had to rewind it.
Yeah, I was going to say not only return, but rewind.
Yeah, be kind, rewind. Absolutely. Exactly. But it's funny though, and I know a lot of people, like I said, there's parallels with kind of what we do here at the library. A lot of people will stop in and grab their books for like the month. Yeah, I totally remember going in and you grabbed like your movies for the weekend, and had to return them on Monday. So it was good times. Yeah. All right. So the reason why we are here today, Kate is so excited. Caroline and I are also excited. I'm not sure if we quite match the excitement of Kate, who, like I said, I think I can officially dub the EPL Lord of the Rings expert. Ooh. But yeah, we are talking all about today the 20th anniversary of the first Lord of the Rings movie, The Fellowship of the Ring. And one thing I always like to do before we kind of do these episodes, we just did this on the ABBA one, is I like to kind of share a few little fun facts about Lord of the Rings with the listeners. So The Fellowship of the Ring, of course, the book originally written by J.R.R. Tolkien, was first published on July 29th, 1954, and is a sequel to the 1937 book, The Hobbit. other two books in the series, Two Towers and Return of the King, were all published within the same year as The Fellowship of the Ring. And the books themselves have sold over 150 million copies worldwide. Today, of course, we're talking about the Peter Jackson film trilogy, but that actually wasn't the first Lord of the Rings adventure on the big screen. In 1978, animator Ralph Bakshi made an animated film version that covers the Fellowship of the Ring and part of the Two Towers. The movie didn't do very good. It didn't have great reviews, but good news. We actually have it in our collection, so you can borrow that from us. I've seen stills of the movie. It's got a really unique animation style. So if you're familiar with the movies like animated movies like Heavy Metal, it looks very similar to that. And what's really cool about these movies, though, like these movies, when they came together, it was a huge deal because all three films were shot back to back to back. They were filmed between October 99 and December 2000. The budget was nearly $300 million. And back in 2000, that was a huge amount. Nowadays, that's like the budget of one Avengers movie, basically. So it was a huge gamble that the studio ended up taking to make these movies, but it paid off because the films ended up grossing over $2.9 billion worldwide. And the final film installment, The Return of the King, won Best Picture at the 2004 Oscars. So it ended on a high note. And Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the other two movies were all ended up being nominated for Best Picture, but it was The Return of the King was the one that won.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I remember that Oscars. They also are won the most Oscars. They won 11, 12, something like it was the same. They were nominated for the most. They won as much as All About Eve or something like that.
Yeah.
Yes, it definitely paid off in the end. I wonder if the Academy was just waiting for the third one. They were like, we can't give it every year.
No, we can't give you 3 Best Pictures. We'll give you one, and we'll reward you at the end. Let's see how you wrap this thing up. The Fellowship of the Ring had its wide release on December 19th, 2001. So when you hear this, we're almost at that exact 20-year mark. So let's go back to that time period. What were you up to then? Kate, I have a feeling that were you camped out to get tickets? Like how excited were you?
I was so excited. Yeah, I bought tickets in advance and we lined up because that's what you did back then. There was no choosing your seats in advance. And so I was lined up hours in advance. I wasn't the first in line though. There was other people ahead of me. But I went with a group of friends and I think I probably lined up first and the friends joined me hours later. That probably, I don't remember, but that seems right. Yeah, we were so excited. It was the midnight showing as well. You gotta go to that one. Yeah, but I've been excited about it for ages because word had started coming out about the movies back in, obviously, when they started casting in 99. And so, we were all, anyone who was interested in it, we're super excited to hear any little bits and pieces. Because also there wasn't all the stuff on the internet like there is now. Like 99 is still pretty early days for this kind of stuff. So, little bits and pieces would come through. I remember hearing that Elijah Wood had been cast as Frodo, which I was super excited about because Elijah Wood has always been one of my favorite actors back since, Radio Flyer and Huck Finn and all those kind of movies. I remember thinking, how are they going to make him small? I remember that being a concern of mine. How are they actually going to do the Hobbit-sized stuff compared to the normal humans? And being we'll see how this goes. I remember hearing Liv Tyler had been cast as Arwen, and the only thing I knew her from at that time was That Thing You Do, the Tom Hanks movie. So I was kind of like, oh, this'll, okay. Not who I would have chosen, but all right. Which, another fun fact, That Thing You Do was scored by Howard Shore, who did the music to Lord of the Rings. So it was a nice little tie-in, because I was also doing my research leading up to this. I remember I knew Cate Blanchett, so the fact that she had got cast as Galadriel was, really exciting to me. Galadriel's always been one of my favorite characters, and Cate Blanchett has been one of my favorite actresses since I saw her in Elizabeth, which had come out a few years before then. And so, all these little bits and pieces had started coming out, and we were getting more and more excited about it. But still, I have to admit, probably somewhat nervous because it is a huge undertaking. It is such a piece of literature that I knew so well and so many people knew so well, and it was always like, well, how are they going to adapt this? What are they going to do to it? Is it going to be okay? So I remember being slightly worried as well.
So where like what were you doing at the time? Were you like in university or were you?
Yeah, I would have been what second year? Yes, second year. Second year. I was at college at the time, so Kwantlen College was a college at the time. It's now a university, but yeah, going to university and studying English Lit, no surprise. And like I said, a whole bunch of our friends went. Some of them had read the book, some of them had not. I remember after seeing the movie, I'm pretty sure we went to a Tim Hortons to like debrief, and some people who hadn't read the book being a little confused about some of the things that had happened. I'm not sure if anyone, I know there were people out there who went to the movie thinking that it was kind of a self-contained movie and being surprised when it, the end didn't really end. It just stopped. And you're like, oh, that's not the end to the story. Yeah. I see Caroline is putting up her hand.
Yeah, that absolutely was my experience of it.
Well, it's funny you mention that because I remember, like, I rewatched the movie last night, and one of the things that it's funny because it just kind of made me think of. I remember seeing a teaser trailer for it, and there's that scene in the movie where the Fellowship is together, and they're walking kind of over the mountain, and you see a shot of
music.
Like, yeah, it's a great scene in the movie, totally epic. And what I remember about that scene though is that was used in the teaser trailer because they gave you like a look at like all these characters, and I remember seeing like Fellowship of the Ring 2001, Two Towers 2002, and it's like, whoa, this is going to be like this giant epic trilogy. So yeah, I guess that would be really confusing if you went in thinking like, oh, this is nice, we'll go see this one movie and it'll be self-contained and everything. So Caroline, how about you? Like did you line up to get tickets as well? Did you go to that midnight screening? When was the first time you watched it?
I did see it in the theater. I was in high school, I think grade 12, so almost graduating but still not. This is the thing around Ontario high school where I like to tell people, which is true, that I had 5 years of high school, and especially in Alberta where right now a norm is 3 years, they kind of give me a funny look, but it was year 4 of 5. I knew it was coming out. I religiously read Entertainment Weekly, and so definitely had an understanding of it. I remember the kind of word being around, how filmable is this? Because the previous attempts at telling it had not been commercially successful, and it was a book property that had existed for a long time. It wasn't like a newer thing. But then once Titanic came out, there was kind of an appetite for epicness in the movies, and so I think people were willing to be cautiously optimistic with it. It came out, as we said, December 19th. I saw it over that Christmas period in Parry Sound, Ontario, where my grandparents and my cousins lived. I went with my cousins, including my oldest cousin who had done her English thesis on Tolkien, and so she was like, let's go, I'm really excited, it's this. And then we watched it, and I did not know anything about what I was watching. I knew that there were going to be more movies, but I thought each one would have a self-contained story. And so I just remember that like they go through all of these terrible things, and the moment it's finally starting to look up for them, that's it. And it's like, all right, see you next year. And I actually, in the theater, turned to her and was like, that's it? Like that, I was that person doing this. And she kind of explained where this fell. And so that was my experience of it. I had not read the books, did not know what I was going into, but liked going to the movies, so I was up to see anything.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I remember enjoying it. I I remember being confused and not really know, because also people's name, there's a character
Yeah.
who has like, he's this guy but he's also that guy, and figuring out connections. But yeah, I liked the council
Hmm.
scene, like where they're all together and they're
Yeah. The
figuring out.
Council of Elrond. Yeah.
Yeah, I like what they're gonna do. It just, I didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah. Interesting. I always wonder, because I mean, obviously, having read the book so many times, like it's always hard for me to judge. Is this entertaining to people who don't know the story? I hope so. Obviously, millions of people saw it, but yeah, it's always a question mark, right? With these kind of stories, especially since there's so much that is left out. Like the books have so much more in them, and they take so much more time to explain things. Where it might just be a passing comment in the movie that just you're like, I have no idea what that means. So
Yeah, for me at the time, very similar to Caroline. I remember reading about it as well, and I was also a subscriber to Entertainment Weekly, and so yeah, I kept hearing about this production of Lord of the Rings and how they were filming, all three of these movies together at the same time, and it was just this huge budget. But it's funny though, because I wasn't like growing up, I really wasn't that familiar with Lord of the Rings. Like I never read the books. Like I knew of them, but like I couldn't tell you what it was about. I couldn't
mm-hmm.
tell you a single character in it or anything like that. Like I think I kind of knew it was fantasy, obviously, but that was really about it. Yeah, and at the time, Cheryl and I had just moved to Lethbridge. I was working for the Lethbridge Herald newspaper there, and yeah, I remember that was like the biggest release that year, probably besides the first Harry Potter movie, which had also come out like I think a month or two before
earlier.
that.
It was November, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. So I remember I got us tickets opening weekend and we went, and both of us, really, Cheryl and I, we didn't really know much about it. We both really enjoyed the movie. I knew that there was going to obviously be a second movie kind of coming out, but yeah, we both enjoyed it. I remember at the time kind of thinking like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to read the book, and just never did. And like I'll just wait for the movie, the next few movies to come out. But like, yeah, as somebody who knew very little about the property at all, yeah, I thought it was a fun movie. And I'm not the biggest fan of fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
like movies or books or anything like that, but I was able to follow along for the most part. And yeah, there was times where I thought the movie definitely did feel kind of long, but it did have this epicness to it that kind of this was like an event movie to go to, and
Mm-hmm.
it was fun.
And 20 years later, you get to talk about it. So
Exactly. Here we are.
You've got the tickets. You're in line. You've got the tickets. You're going. You're with your friends. What did you think when you first watched it? Do you remember, Kate?
I mean, I don't remember details, but I think I do remember. Well, Bryce, you rewatched it recently, so it opens with like New Line Cinema, and it's done in like Tolkien style writing, and it's like all dark and it's silent, and then you get like the tiny bits of music, and then you hear Kate Blanchett start talking, and she's talking in Elvish and over in English, and I think even at that moment I was like, oh, they got this. Like I just remember like, this is perfect. I love this, and I mean I've yeah, the whole thing. I do think they captured it so well. They understood the source material, even though they did change stuff. Of course they did. They cut parts. People will bang on and on about how Tom Bombadil is not in it. Don't ask people about that, because some people are very, very upset about that. But, I think they really captured the essence of it. I thought all of the acting was amazing. I thought they cast it so well. And the scenery, everything, the costumes, just, oh my god. Like if you have the extended versions, there's all the extra behind the scenes stuff that you can watch, hours and hours of that, and the amount of work that got put into making this movie to make sure it was as good as it could possibly be it was there. So yeah. Ugh. I'm like getting flustered just talking about it. I'm still 20 years later, and I'm still so happy with it.
I do remember that the attention to detail, and so coming in without that deep knowledge perspective, I could still appreciate how detailed the scenes were, the sets were, the work that had gone into it. I probably recognized that it meant something, I just didn't know what it was, and for some of it, I didn't really need to, like, it's that thing where if you know the backstory or the history of what this is in the Shire, then you're like, "Oh, it's that. So glad they added that." And I'm just like, "Oh, this looks pretty." And I remember the camera work, the effect of having the hobbits be small
Mm.
was exciting because there was in some ways almost a comic element to it, but it wasn't done as a joke, right? It was just how the story was. And I think there was a still of Gandalf sitting in Bilbo's
I'm so
hut.
impressed. Yes.
What do they call the Hobbit
Hobbit
house?
Hole. This
Hobbit
is Hobbit
Hall.
Hole. Yeah.
And
At
he's
his
kind
house,
of
yeah.
like, yeah, he's kind of sitting at like a table and a chair and is a little
With the
scrunched.
tea.
Yeah, and it's that's how I think they were able to communicate a lot of stuff with the visual film language.
I was so impressed. And one of the things I think works so well about it is that a lot of it is actual physical effects. It's not CGI, which is why also I can watch it 20 years later.
And why one of the reasons why Harry Potter 1 is harder to sit, like the Quidditch scenes, which at the
Mhm.
time were like, whoo, and now you watch it and it's like, oh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there is tons of CGI in Lord of the Rings, and actually a lot of new techniques were created in order to do stuff in Lord of the Rings. But it's not. They still did so much physically. Like the forced perspective was used so much in order to make the hobbits look small. It was, or they used little people or even children with masks to be body doubles of the hobbits so that they could get the scaling right. Whereas in the Hobbit, which I know we're not talking about, but in the Hobbit movies, they use so much CGI. Like there was a lot of like acting on separate sound stages with green screens and then putting them together. And I think it actually doesn't look as good.
Yeah. No, that's actually a really great point. Yeah, when I was watching it yesterday, that's the one thing I kind of noticed. That's one thing I always kind of look for when you go back and watch a lot of these movies is how does like the special effects hold up? And like you said, this movie was filmed over 20 years ago, and everything still holds up. And like, there's a few movies like that, Jurassic Park, Terminator 2.
Actually, The Matrix I rewatched recently too, and I think The Matrix holds up. The original Matrix holds up pretty well too. And again, they were pioneering so many new effects, but
Yeah, all that stuff, really holds up, and it just kind of goes to show why those are such classic movies. But yeah, I remember I only watched the first Hobbit movie, and that was the one thing that I remember leaving the theater thinking about was like, oh, this doesn't like, yeah, you could just tell there's like, this is all green screen stuff.
just too bad. I mean, I like Lord of the Rings better than The Hobbit, the book. So I was like, I wasn't as invested in The Hobbit, so I was like, oh, it's a good movie, whatever. But Lord of the Rings, I'm glad that they...
Is that a controversial opinion?
I don't think it's controversial. I think it depends on the person. The Hobbit, it's funny, you mentioned at the beginning, The Hobbit is the original story, and then Lord of the Rings is the sequel. Like, he wrote The Hobbit, it did really well. It's light, it's fluffy, it's a quick read. It's very much a children's story in many ways. There's little like passing comments to the rest of Tolkien's world, but it's not steeped in the tradition and the legends and his creation of language and all that kind of stuff. So his publishers were like, we want another one. He's like, yeah, totally. 20 years later, he comes up with Lord of the Rings, which is completely different, massive, and so complex and so full of all these hints to other things. Like if you read the book, there's just like people will start like sprouting poems about something that is never explained. You have to read all of Tolkien's other works to even understand what was being mentioned there. And like it's crazy that they kind of allowed him to do that. But he was one not to he didn't take editing well. From what I've read, he kind of was like, no, I know what I'm writing. That's there for a reason. This is how I want it. He wanted it to be published as one volume. Like, he wanted it just as one book, and they went, no, that's too hard to sell. We cannot sell that. You need to split it up into 3 parts, which he was not happy about it, because he's like, this is one story. I don't understand why it should be three books.
Is the movie faithful to where the book ends?
Yes-ish. It's fairly close to where it ends. I did reread it in the past year, but I've forgotten. It's fairly close. It gets a little wonkier in the second and third movie because the second and third book is split. They don't go back and forth between the 2 parties. Like, once the parties split, the book separates it. The first half is about one group, the second half is about the other. In the movies, they blended a bit more. They changed the timeline slightly, which makes sense for a movie version. It would have been really weird as a movie if you just saw what Aragorn was doing for 2 hours and then you saw what Frodo was doing for 2 hours. It doesn't quite work. One of the things that is funny, and you see this online quite a bit, is if you ever watch the movie with someone who's a fan like me, there's certain things we all do. And, like, we always point out the same things. It's like, if in the second movie, the big one is, in the second movie, there's a part where Aragorn, who's also Strider, Caroline, 2 names.
That one I knew.
Yeah. He gets upset and he kicks a helmet that's on the ground. He screams and he falls to his knees. Every single Tolkien fan will point out at that point, he actually broke his foot there. That's why he's screaming so convincingly. So you'll always hear that. So there's these, like, things that we always say, we always do, but I enjoy it. I have to, even when I'm watching it by myself, I have to, like, stop myself from saying, he broke his foot there.
So, Kate, I have to ask you, do you have a favorite scene or characters from the movie?
I mean, Samwise I love all of them. I think Sam is a great character that often gets looked over, but he's so integral to the story, and I think Tolkien made him, like, such an important character for a reason. He is kind of this everyman. He's a gardener. He's not, like, even among hobbits, he's not like the upper class hobbits like Frodo and Merry and Pippin are supposed to be a little bit more upper class. He's kind of like, Tolkien wrote from experience, obviously. He didn't write allegory. This is not one-to-one his experience in World War I or anything like that, but you can see that some elements are drawn, like Sam is probably more like the soldiers going to war often brought their batmen with them, who were their, like, kind of servants, but they were so important to these people. Anyways, I think Sam is infused with a lot of what Tolkien loved about sort of English culture and what he thought was important about humanity, and so I think he's a really beautiful character. But in the first movie, I love lots of scenes. I love Galadriel, so any scene that she's in, I enjoy. I mean, that crazy scene where she kind of turns into this, like, dark Galadriel and, you see her kind of go a little insane as she's tempted by the ring. I love that. It's a weird scene, but I love it. Anything in the Shire is beautiful and idyllic and all that kind of stuff. I really love, in sort of a bad way, I guess, because it's not like I love watching this scene, but the scene where Boromir dies at the end, where he gets shot by those arrows. I love that scene, and literally, again, I've seen this movie, I don't even know how many times. I'm watching it last night. I'm not even watching it closely. I was doing a puzzle at the same time. I was just like, I know it so well. But we get to that scene, and, like, he gets shot with that first arrow, and it's, like, the sound effects are crazy because you hear the thunk, and the music dies down, and anyways, it's beautiful. And I'm doing the puzzle, and I stop, and I start crying. And I was like, I can't help it. Every single time, I just weep for Boromir and his, like, beautiful speech at the end right before he dies to Aragorn, and I'm getting, like, choked up just talking about it now. So I do think that scene is just so well done. It's crazy how much it's just so beautiful. Again, I'm overwhelmed. I can't even think of words to describe it.
This is not a good segue after you've talked about the beautiful emotion of him, but that's the character who's in, like, the meme, right?
Yes, one does not simply.
Yeah.
Although the meme where he's doing that is not actually where he says that line. The picture and the line are slightly different times. But yes, that's that guy. That's Sean Bean, who dies in every movie he's in. Sam's speech at the end of Two Towers. They nail these, like, beautiful end moments. So Two Towers, Sam gives a speech about why it's so important, like, even if it looks like you're not going to make it to keep going anyways. And again, that feels like very World War I, World War II kind of mentality, where it's like, well, all hope might be lost, but it's important we keep fighting anyways. Like, it's just beautiful. And in Return of the King, where Frodo is basically done. He's been consumed practically by the ring, and he can't move any further. And Sam just says, I can't carry the ring, but I can carry you, and picks him up and starts carrying him up the mountain. I'm like, literally, I am actually choking up at the thought of that one.
I haven't seen that, but listening to you describe it is quite lovely.
It's so lovely, and like Sam's like holding him, and Frodo's like, I've forgotten what strawberries taste like. I can't remember the wind and this and. Anyways, I could quote it, but I'll stop.
Speaking of quoting, one of my favorite things is how much Stephen Colbert loves Lord of the Rings and his ability to just like quote extended passages from it. But thinking of Sam and Frodo, should Lord of the Rings be mentioned more when we discuss buddy movies?
I mean, does a buddy movie only require that there are two guys who are like best friends and help each other out? Then sure. I'm not sure that's the only, it doesn't have a feel of a buddy movie to me so much, but I don't know what it is that sets it apart.
Caroline, did you have any favorite, were there any scenes? I know you didn't watch it.
Yeah, I'm impressed you liked the Council of Elrond. It's a bunch of people sitting in a circle talking.
Oh, I love that. I love that. This is it. I'm a character reader. And so even when I don't know what's happening, a bunch of people getting together and just being together, I would watch that. I would watch an extended Council of Elrond.
Well, there is in the extended version. It's extended.
Yeah, I like that because I like characters, particularly strongly defined characters. And this, again, even if I don't understand really all of their motivations or backgrounds, that exists. And the way that they put the movie together, you can see that the filmmakers had that understanding. Even if something is not going to play out until down the road, they're putting that in. I just remember things like, Orlando Bloom's hair is majestic, and that's mainly, I think most of my memories of it is that visual.
I just thinking about the Council of Elrond and the different characters, I do think that's a great scene too, and I'm glad that you like it. I just feel like some people might come to it and be like, okay, it's like a bunch of arguing. I love again, how that scene ends, where they're all these different personalities are coming at each other. They all have different motivations, and it leads to this huge argument, and everyone's on their feet yelling about what we should do with the ring. And then Frodo just, his little voice saying, I will take the ring to Mordor, and everyone kind of stops and turns and looks to him. And he's this tiny, hobbit, and he's going to take this quest on. I think that is a beautiful moment as well.
Yeah, when I was, it's funny because even before I rewatched it, one of the characters I really enjoyed, and we don't obviously see him a lot in this movie, but he's so important, obviously, to the plot, is Bilbo Baggins, of course, played by Ian Holm, and we of course start the movie with him in his home, and everything in the Shire to me is great. It looks like you see that opening scene when they're in the Shire, it's like you want to live there, and you just want to chill out and eat and smoke your pipe.
Yeah, and again, that's like Tolkien's idea of this is the England I love, and that sort of pastoral, rural that he felt was being lost in as he was writing that, and so you can see his love for that, I think.
And I also think too, we wouldn't be paying proper respects to the movie without us mentioning the scene. It's of course, Gandalf, you shall not pass. It's just such an epic and badass scene, and he's what looks like really sacrificing himself to have Frodo and the rest of the Fellowship kind of get out of that situation that they're in. But if there was one scene, before last night, I don't remember the last time I watched the movie, but that's the one where I throw in my DVD a copy of it, and I'm like, okay, where's this part again? And I knew it was kind of towards the end, but yeah, it was just that was the one scene that I remember just being like, this is awesome.
As we mentioned, the Fellowship of the Ring was followed by The Two Towers in 2002 and The Return of the King in 2003. Looking at the trilogy as a whole, what do you think is the legacy of these movies?
Oh, that's a hard
Kate,
question.
if you could describe it in about 30 seconds, that would be great.
Man, that was the legacy. I mean, I think proving that, people are interested in these epic stories in movie format. I mean, not only is it 3 movies that you do have to watch all 3 in order to understand, but like the theatrical versions were long enough. Like I don't remember how long they were because I never watched the theatrical versions anymore.
3 hours.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I mean, that's the thing. Like even the theatrical version, say, is 9 hours total, and people are willing to pay money to go see this. And then they're also willing to pay money to get the extended versions and do crazy marathons once a year, like maybe I do, of, 12 and a half hours of watching this movie over and over again. I think it does prove that there is that appetite out there, and it probably did eventually lead to things like the MCU. I mean, I just went and saw Dune the other night, which, again, that's going to be a trilogy, I assume. I thought it was weird. The second movie of Dune was not greenlit until the first one was like out and doing okay or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they didn't, okay. Whereas Lord of the Rings got the okay to film all 3 right away. It's interesting that was a difference there. But so again, I think that showing that people do want these kind of movies, and fantasy is always kind of pushed off to the side as well. And so showing that it can be this epic, wonderful thing that people love. I mean, heck, would Game of Thrones exist if Lord of the Rings hadn't been made? I don't know. And now there's the new Lord of the Rings TV show. It's not Lord of the Rings, but Tolkien TV show coming from Prime next year.
It's September of 22
next year. And
Yep.
Speaking of like cost, so $200 million to make Lord of the Rings. I think the like budget for the Lord of the Rings TV show is something like $1 billion or something like that. Like they are putting so much money into this series.
Before we get to our roundtable questions, Bryce, can you let everyone know what we'll be chatting about on our next episode, which will be coming out on Friday, December 17th?
Yeah, so there's another big movie anniversary this year, and that's the 75th anniversary of the 1946 Christmas classic, It's a Wonderful Life, of course, starring Jimmy Stewart. We're going to take a look back at the legacy of this classic Frank Capra film. I'm going to talk about why I love the Pottersville scenes. I'm really looking forward to this episode. So joining us to talk all about everything about It's a Wonderful Life is Overdue Fine's family member, Camilla Fida, and co-host of the podcast, I Love This, You Should Too, Indy Randhawa. And this is, I love It's a Wonderful Life, and I can't wait to talk about it on our next episode. Caroline, I assume you're a fan of the movie
I
too.
am. I will likely be rewatching it between now and then if I have any time after I get into the Lord of the Rings. But I'm really looking forward to hearing and talking with Indy and Camila and getting your takes, Bryce, because I know you're ready to go. So
I am, absolutely. Time for quick roundtable questions. If you were a member of the Fellowship, which member would you be? So Caroline sent out a link. So if you didn't know, Caroline sent out a link to this quiz. You go through like 10 questions and it tells you which character you would be. But Kate, did you have to do the quiz or did you know?
I didn't do the quiz. I did think about it though. And there's like different aspects. It's hard. Like you want to be Frodo, you want to be Legolas or Aragorn. I'm like, I'm not sure I would be though. I think I'd probably be more like Merry or Pippin. Maybe more Merry than Pippin. I don't think I'd be quite the clueless that Pippin in the movie is portrayed as. Merry is much more like, I don't know, practical. He's still a bit silly, but he also like kind of gets what's going on. I would love to be Sam, but I just don't think I'm that good of a person. He's just so good and so loyal. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm being hard on myself, and I'm like, I'd probably be one of Merry or Pippin.
Caroline, I assume you did the quiz like me. Who did you?
Mine was Frodo, which I will take, but seems very high profile. But I'll take it.
For me, I got Aragorn for some crazy reason. I didn't think I would get him at all. I definitely don't view myself that way. I definitely kind of more identify with the hobbits. I like the idea of just chilling out and just eating lots of food. And yeah, of course, we've talked all about Lord of the Rings. It was released Christmas in 2001. Caroline also sent out a list of some of the other movies that were released during 2001 around that period. Which movie were you going to see in the theater besides Lord of the Rings during that time? Kate?
I looked at that list. I was amazed how many movies are turning 20 this year. Like, some real classics are turning 20. I mean, we already mentioned Harry Potter. Zoolander came out that year, which I don't think aged quite as well as Lord of the Rings, but I do still enjoy it. But actually, the one that really struck me, and I think I did see it in theater, I've definitely seen it multiple times, is Gosford Park. Again, if you haven't seen Gosford Park, loved that movie. It's so brilliant. Very different from Lord of the Rings, but I rewatch it quite often. Wonderful kind of almost pastiche of murder mysteries, but still a great murder mystery. And like Helen Mirren, I mean, all the actors in it knock it out of the park, but Helen Mirren's character just like, oh.
Mine was tough. I wanted to say Ocean's 11, but then I realized my true answer would be Vanilla Sky. I was a huge Cameron Crowe fan, very excited. This was going to be the follow-up after Almost Famous. I don't think I saw Vanilla Sky until it was released on DVD. I probably had a DVD player by this time, or maybe I rented it from Betty's Convenience. I don't really know, but I definitely had the soundtrack, and I listened to that over and over and over again. So I was in the mood for Tom Cruise in Vanilla Sky.
Yeah, my answer was also Vanilla Sky here. And I remember we saw it, Cheryl and I went and saw it in the theater. I remember not liking it at all, actually. I just remember being really disappointed because, yeah, when you're coming off Jerry Maguire and Almost Famous, and yeah, I just remember thinking like that movie kind of sucked, actually. So, but now if I could go back in time travel and I'm seeing any of those movies in the theater, it's going to be Ali. So I saw it. I did see it when it first came out, and I haven't watched it probably since then. But that's a movie I would like to go back and revisit.
Kate, thank you so much for joining us today. I have had so much fun talking about Lord of the Rings, and really appreciate you coming on to share your thoughts about it. Is there anything you'd like to plug to our listeners?
I just want to mention again the Capital City Press Anthology. You can read it online, capitalcitypress.ca, or download the audio versions wherever you get your podcasts. We also have embedded links on the website as the episodes come out. So if you do go to the Capital City Press website, you can access it through there, as well as to the EPL website. And also let people know that Volume 2 is a go. So the call for submissions just went up the week we're recording this and are open to the end of the year. So if you're from the Edmonton area and have a short story, poem, or a piece of creative nonfiction that you would like to submit for consideration to Volume 2 of the anthology, you can visit epl.ca/Capital City Press to get information on the guidelines and how to submit to us. Really excited.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure that you're subscribed so that you automatically get new episodes. Please also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love getting reviews. And if you like what you heard, please tell a friend about the show, maybe a friend who loves Lord of the Rings.
So don't forget that we'll have a link to everything that we talked about in today's show notes. And if you want to share your favorite Lord of the Rings moments with us, email us at podcast@epl.ca or hit us up on Twitter by using the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.